So you may recall that I've been talking about how this Saturday, I believe, there will be a vote on aid for Ukraine. There will be finally a vote for aid for Ukraine. And it seems like let's turn off the tabs for now. So we've been talking about recently about how there will be a vote on Ukrainian aid on Saturday. Finally, Speaker Mike Johnson's gonna put the Ukrainian aid to vote. And it seems like, hello Matrix Dawn, hello. And it seems like many hardcore Make America Great Again people within the GOP are not exactly pleased with this development, not exactly pleased with the uh, not exactly pleased with the con, cons, not exactly pleased with that bill being put to a vote. So they have put forward their own list of amendments to the bill, some of them more ridiculous than others. And I guess I'd like to sort of focus on one particular person, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has sort of been recently straight up blackmailing Speaker Mike Johnson that should he put any for sort of aid to Ukraine forward, she would oust him as Speaker. And she has put forward a few very interesting amendments to the bill. I will fully admit that when I've seen these amendments for the first time, I've been convinced that there were just an attempt to troll. I was pretty sure that I was being trolled, that I was being punked. But it seems not. It seems like this is very real. Let's take a look at some of this. Marjorie Taylor Greene, in a nod to Viktor Orban, has submitted an amendment to the Ukraine aid bill barring funding until restrictions on Hungarians in Transcarpathia and other minorities are lifted, which is extremely bizarre. Amendment to H.R. 8035, Ukraine Security Supplemental Appropriations Act 2024. No funding shall be made available to Ukraine unless restrictions on ethnic minorities, including Hungarians in Transcarpathia, right to use their native languages in schools are lifted. What a giant Hungary ally Marjorie Taylor Greene is all of a sudden. There's more. There's more. here. Marjorie Taylor Greene has submitted an amendment to the Ukraine aid bill barring any aid until Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky resigns. Amendment to H.R. 8035 offered by Mrs. Greene of Georgia. At the end of the bill, add the following. None of the funds made available by this act may be obligated to or expended until Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky resigns. I thought these were fake. I honestly thought this was fake when I first saw it. I thought I was being trolled. I thought I was being. I thought I was sort of being. Okay, let's continue. Because these are. Marjorie Taylor Greene has submitted an amendment to Ukraine aid bill directing Biden to withdraw from NATO. Like, this cannot be. Amendment to H.R. Ukraine Security Supplemental Appropriations Act 2024. The President is directed to withdraw the United States from NATO. This is real. This is real. What else? Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendments to the Foreign Aid Bill. AIDS Bill. Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendment to the Foreign Aid Bill. 1. Members who vote for Ukraine aid must conscript in the Ukrainian army. 2. Israel aid will be used for the development of space laser technology on the southern border. Amendments to H.R. offered by Mrs. Greene of Georgia. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following. 1. By the funds made available by this act, such sums are as necessary shall be used for the development of space laser technology on the southern border. Amendment to Ukraine Security Supplemental Appropriations Act 2024 offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia. Any member of Congress who votes in favor of this act shall be required to conscript in the Ukrainian army. I don't know what to say. Another Marjorie Taylor Greene amendment to Ukraine aid. All the money in the bill is reduced to zero and instead provided to FEMA to give to East Palestine, Ohio. It's not satire. It's not satire. Those are actual amendments that she put forward. Those are actual amendments that she put forward. Amendment offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following. Each amount made available by this act is hereby reduced by 100%, and such amounts shall be made available to the administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency to assist the communities in and around East Palestine, Ohio. Hold on. Oh my god. Where is it? I can't find it. Oh my gosh. Here it is. Wow. So yeah, this is. There's also a full on. MSNBC News. Wait. The hell? Marjorie Taylor Greene demands space lasers at the border. Jesus. House conservatives are furious with Speaker Mike Johnson for championing another massive round of Ukraine aid. But for all the grousing threats and public protests, none of the critics are ready to use the one tool that lends them leverage in the fight, a motion to vacate. Without it, they're left with no viable way to stop Johnson. Maybe. Conservatives raced around Capitol Hill on Thursday in various demonstrations of outrage over Johnson's leadership style in general and his handling of the Ukraine debate in particular, a fury fueled by news reports suggesting Johnson was ready to weaken a rule empowering a single lawmaker to force a vote of no confidence against the Speaker. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a frequent critic of the Speaker who has already introduced a motion to vacate against him, went so far as to carry her resolution onto the House floor during Thursday's lone vote. But for all the dramatic flourishes, the day ended much as it began, with Johnson moving forward on a package of foreign aid bills that are expected to pass through the lower chamber with overwhelming Democratic support in a series of votes on Saturday. The day's developments are the latest reflection of the enduring dilemma facing Johnson as he seeks to steer contentious legislation through a divided House in the face of persistent opposition from a rambunctious right flank, which has lost faith in his willingness to fight for conservative policy priorities. Time after time, Johnson has chosen to cut deals with President Biden for the sake of enacting prominent bills, infuriating conservatives who pressed him to use the GOP's House majority to secure greater Republican victories. Those dynamics were front and center in the recent debates over federal spending and government surveillance, two issues on which Johnson joined forces with Democrats to ensure the bills become law, and they're shaping the debate again this week as he takes the plunge to advance another massive round of foreign aid, which includes more than $60 billion in new Ukraine funding, over the noisy objections of his most animated hardline critics like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Those critics are taking defeat silently. Almost a dozen members of the far-right House Freedom Caucus surrounded Johnson in the back of the House chamber after Thursday's lone vote, hounding him to resist any modification to the motion to vacate, the mechanism used to remove former Speaker Kevin McCarthy in October. The full court press proved to be a success. Johnson announced Thursday afternoon that he would not increase the threshold to trigger a vote on ousting the Speaker, siding with the conservative rabble-rousers over moderate lawmakers looking to avoid chaos in the chamber. Recently, many members have encouraged me to endorse a new rule to raise this threshold. While I understand the importance of that idea, any rule change requires a majority of the full House, which we do not have. Johnson wrote on the social platform X, "We will continue to govern under the existing rules." But the more consideration of the change uh, landed the Speaker in further hot water with conservatives, and more of them now appear open to booting Johnson than when Thursday began. Rep. Lauren Boebert warned that she would support his ouster if he went ahead and changed the threshold, and Rep. Matt Gaetz, who previously said he was against a motion to vacate because it may lead to a Democratic Speaker, railed against Johnson's recent legislative moves and suggested he would do the same. Matt Gaetz, the famous creep that shared his sex videos with other Republicans. I think a motion to vacate is something that could put the conference in peril, and Ms. Boebert and I were working to avoid that, Gaetz said. Our goal is to avoid a motion to vacate, but we're not going to surrender that accountability tool, particularly in a time when we are seeing America's interests subjugated to foreign interests abroad. I suppose this is about foreign aid for Ukraine. Even Green, who marched Thursday from the chamber to the Capitol steps, her motion to vacate in hand to denounce Johnson to reporters, has so far declined to force a vote on her resolution. Green has hammered Johnson for sealing spending deals with Biden, for opposing a new warrant requirement surrounding the government's surveillance powers, and for championing the $60 billion in new Ukraine aid, without ensuring it will be accompanied by tougher security measures at the US-Mexico border, an early demand of the Speaker that he abandoned this week in announcing his four-vote strategy for securing foreign aid. Republican voters want actions. They want to be protected from the destructive Democrat agenda, Green told reporters Thursday, and Republican leaders aren't doing it. Yet, Even the prospect of Johnson changing the motion to vacate threshold did not compel Green to commit to forcing a vote on her ouster resolution. Asked about her reluctance to pull the trigger, Green suggested she was waiting for more of her GOP colleagues to endorse her measure. I am not acting out of emotions or rash feelings or anger. I'm doing this the right way, she said, and I'm allowing my conference to see exactly what I saw months ago. Jewish space laser lady, by the way. The conservatives' outcry, followed by inaction on ousting Johnson, has gotten under the skin of the Speaker's allies, some of whom are challenging hardline critics to put up or shut up, in the words of Rep. Derek Van Orden. Yeah. We got to call their bluff, Van Order said Thursday afternoon by phone. And if they are not bluffing and they want to vacate the speakership, the American people are gonna see that these folks are not here to govern. They're not serious legislators. They're here showboating, he added. We don't have room for that. True. This is all very unserious. This is all very ridiculous. Like amendment that demands that all people that vote for Ukrainian aid conscript to Ukrainian army. There was one amendment that demanded that uh, aid be given only after a certain amount of wall is finished. Only a certain amount of wall is finished. So this is the situation. There will be a vote this week, this Saturday, on aid to Ukraine. Certain GOP lunatics have given their ridiculous amendments around Ukraine conscription, space lasers, and building the wall. We will see how it will go. We will see if this will be stalled. But let's see what the reaction of Russia is to all of this. Because I've seen some cope coming from Russia itself when it comes to this aid. Kremlin says any new colonial US aid to Ukraine won't change frontline situation. And I must admit that Russia calling other countries colonial is the most delicious piece of irony I have seen in a while. Russia that's basically doing a colonial land grab on Ukraine, and that it probably wants to reestablish its empire, which probably will set its sights on Poland sooner or later, says that US giving aid to Ukraine is basically just a colonial project. April 18th. The Kremlin said on Thursday that any new US military aid for Ukraine would not change the situation at the front, where Kyiv's forces were in a poor position, and cast such aid as part of a colonial policy which enriched the United States. This is cope, because we all know that the only reason Russia is making any sort of progress in this war is because of the critical lack of munition on Ukraine's part. Because of the ratio of shelling, which is 10 to 1 right now. Because of the lack of anti air. Because Ukraine has to focus on prioritizing big cities such as Kiev and Kharkiv, and cannot give any anti-air because it lacks it to protect critical infrastructure such as power plants. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, has said he will hold a long awaited vote on a new aid package as early as Saturday. The proposed package includes 60.84 billion to address the conflict in Ukraine, of which 23.2 billion would be used to replenish US weapons stocks and facilities, which means that the equivalent of 23, as I understand it, 0.2 billion of equipment would be sent to Ukraine from the US stockpile, and those 23.2 billion would be used to replenish that stockpile. While the European Union has pledged more overall aid, the United States has given by far the biggest military contribution to help Ukraine fight Russia. Ukraine has to not only fight to provide profit for the Americans, but it also has to fight to the last Ukrainian and is loaded up with debt. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said, "The favorite colonial policy of the United States of America." Peskov noted that a very significant part of the proposed aid would remain in the U.S. military-industrial complex. All experts and semi-experts can now see with the naked eye the situation on the front, which is far from favorable for the Ukrainian side. So this cannot change anything, Peskov said on the aid package, which is, I'm sorry, this is cope. Like saying that providing Ukraine with more weapons and munitions and anti-air will not change anything. It's just pure cope on Russia's side. Russia controls about 18% of Ukraine, and Western leaders and spy chiefs say the war is at a crossroads, which could lead to victory for Russia and humiliation for the West unless Ukraine urgently gets more support, which we might see finally happen soon. Russia's war against Ukraine has triggered the worst crisis in relations between Moscow and the West since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, according to Russian and US diplomats. Of course, the difference between the crisis right now and the crisis in 1962 is that we are not quite as close to a nuclear disaster, a nuclear Armageddon, as we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So, Ukraine, supported by the West, says it is defending itself against a Russian imperial-style land grab, which I agree with. Russia says that the United States tried to shunt Ukraine into the West's orbit and then use it to threaten Russia, which I highly disagree with. It's just hope. First of all, saying that Ukraine receiving aid would change absolutely nothing is the biggest amount of denial of reality I've ever seen. Second of all, Russia has had its sights on these lands which make up today's Ukraine before NATO, before the US had even existed. The attempts at erasure of first Ruthenian language and then Ukrainian language and Belarusian language for that matter predate the existence of the United States of America. So saying that the only reason why Russia is invading Ukraine now is because of NATO or the United States is ignoring the entirety of the history of this region. Please stop the war, says country that does the war. True. That is sadly the typical modus operandi of Russia. So that's it. We have went through some crazy amendments that radical GOP members are putting forward to sort of, I don't know, throw a wrench in the aid bill. We have seen how certain radical elements of the GOP are threatening to oust Mike Johnson as Speaker because of his putting aid to vote. We have also seen the reaction of Russia, which seems to believe that whether or not Ukraine has the means to defend itself will not change anything actually on the battlefield, which, all things considered, is a very um, humorous proposition. And we'll see. We'll see what will happen on Saturday. We'll see how. We'll see if, should the aid bill pass, we shall see firsthand, we shall observe just how true Russia's prediction of it not changing anything will ring to be true. Okay. That is all that there is to be. That is all that there is to say about this topic for now.